Welcome, Barbara. I'm so excited to have a legend like yourself on the podcast today. So, welcome and thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
Now, if I remember correctly, when I heard you speak in one of the coffee classes with the AOMT, is it your 40-year anniversary this year?
This year is my 50-year anniversary.
50! Oh my gosh!
So on June 21st, as of this year, I will have been doing myofunctional therapy for 50 years.
Wow, that is so amazing. Oh my God, I'm just so excited to have you on. I mean, this is just so cool. So if you want to first share with the audience your background, how you got into MYO, and just your journey and how you've seen the field blossom.
Well, actually, I was in the throes of a really, really awful TMJ situation and was having my mouth fully reconstructed and to try to deal with the TMJ pain and issues. And we were sent a patient, I worked in a dental office at the time, and we were sent a patient from UCLA that she was a 16-year-old with no enamel on any of her teeth. So we did full mouth reconstruction. So we were going to be crowning all of her teeth, phase one, because she was only 16. But she had a wide open bite. So we sent her to an orthodontist, Larry Andrews, in San Diego, and he sent her back saying, I'm not touching her until somebody gets rid of this tongue thrust. And Dr. Brown taught at UCLA. He was a full mouth reconstruction dentist. And he goes, tongue what? Okay. So it just happened that we got an announcement that Daniel Garliner was presenting a one-day introductory seminar at the University of San Francisco. So Dr. Brown went to take it, came back and said, oh my God, this is what we need. So I went to the Institute of Myofunctional Therapy in Coral Gables, Florida to treat her, just her. Okay. So I'm sitting there going, oh, this is what I do. Oh my God, this is what I do. And so guess who was my first patient? Myself, obviously. But the day I returned from the Institute, I started treating her. And it was so successful. And we were so excited and everything was going great. And in walks another patient whose orthodontist is saying, well, you're going to have to wear your retainers for the rest of your life. She'd been in braces 4 years. And Dr. Brown looked in her mouth and he said, quote, retain what? Not one tooth in her mouth was touching. And after 4 years of braces. So she was, of course, my next patient. And we finally put her back in braces. And 3 months later, her teeth were perfect. And the orthodontist said, you know what? We finally found the right set of braces for you. Like, hello, does anybody here at home, And I mean, she had already TMJ symptoms, headaches, allergies. She was a mouth breather. Not only, she had all these other symptoms and probably sleep issues. I can't remember at this point with her, but and that just got us started. And then another patient came in, an adult with TMJ issues, and we realized, oh my God, we just haven't been diagnosing this, that so many people had it. And eventually I had to open my own practice just because I was too busy doing myofunctional therapy. And so, ta-da, that was almost 50 years ago. How close are we? 3 from 21.
Wow.
And I'm still doing it, and I will continue to do it as long as I can. I will be 80 in August, which is hard to believe.
God bless you.
But as long as I'm successful, if I'm no longer successful with a patient, I will force myself to retire. But Joy Moeller says, you can never, ever retire. Are you listening to me?
Not allowed. It's not allowed, Barbara.
Joy is on my case always, always and forever. So my journey has been gosh, it's been an extraordinary experience. And the lives I have changed, I could talk to you for days
Mhm.
and going back through cases. And I've just been able to, I call it saving people's lives.
Mhm.
It's truly a miraculous um, journey that you spend. In 4 months' time, I can literally change a person's life.
Right.
And so I think it's just amazing that this isn't mainstream. And that's my biggest disappointment in this journey
Mhm.
is how little this is still accepted or known or utilized by the medical profession, by the dental profession, by even speech pathologists, and by um, OTs, PTs. The whole, I don't understand it.
Mhm.
I'm actually very happy that we have sleep apnea. Not that it's because it's killing people, but because it's finally brought attention
Mhm.
to the importance of myofunctional therapy. And yet still they're ignoring it. But
Mhm.
at least it has brought it into the university level, and the tremendous work that Mark Moeller and Samantha Weaver have been doing to get this known, to get research done, to try to get it into a university
Mhm.
level. And that's my biggest disappointment is that we still don't have at least a 2-year degree program in myofunctional therapy. If we need a college degree in myofunctional therapy, and we need licensure. And so Brazil has all of that.
Mhm.
And so they're way ahead of the United States. So hopefully it won't be in my lifetime. I realize that now. But I pray that people like myself who've been pioneers in the work will somehow have influenced people like Mark and that to push and push until we get it, because that's what it's going to take.
Absolutely, 1,000%.
Yeah. So my journey has been a long one, but it's been a very exciting one. It's been a very disappointing one in many respects, but mainly just because of the referral sources, not the
Mhm.
patients, the referral sources.
Yeah.
The one thing that you, in looking at my journey is, and Joy will agree with me completely, is how it's changing. The patients are getting more and more difficult,
Mhm.
more and more complicated. And so there's so many syndromes. Excuse me, a little drink of water here.
No worries.
There's just so many syndromes and things happening to people. So a brand new myofunctional therapist has a challenge on their hands because the patients are more difficult. But rest assured that God will send you a perfect patient right when you think you're going to lose it totally, because it's happened to me many times. He'll send me a perfect patient who does all of their exercises.
Mhm.
They go through right on schedule. They are totally successful. And you go, oh, this does work. So
1,000%. And you're thanking them. Thank you for making my life easy.
yeah, yeah, like, okay. So do keep that in mind when times get tough. And then the journey with the wonderful mentors that I've had, like Viola Fryman, the cranial osteopath, who, whenever you call her about a patient, her response is always the same. And it has guided almost my entire career. I didn't meet her until I was about 29, and she saved my life with cranial osteopathy when I was going through all that TMJ work. And her answer is always the same, and please memorize this: the potential of the human body is infinite. So therefore, anything we can do can change the human body.
Mhm.
We just have to be good scouts to seek out answers, even if we don't have the answer, but
Right.
to contact people like me or
Mhm.
search through research and find answers for people because they are there.
Mhm.
We can't know everything, but at least we know enough to help people.
Now I'm thinking I had somebody send me a message this morning asking me um, what items I put in my myofunctional therapy kits because I had made a post. My fiance had helped me package up some of them this weekend. So I was putting all his hard work so everybody could give him credit because he does help me a lot. But I'm thinking in my head, like back to when you first started practicing 50 years ago, the kits, there probably wasn't as many props as people or more are more apt to using these days, right?
That is true. And I use many different things that other people don't use. So, and that's one of my sad things in the therapy process is unfortunately we don't have a unified teaching program.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to encourage people to study with everybody that they could,
Right.
just so you have a broader and possibly learn more exercises that can be utilized. I happen to be a very sequentially oriented therapist. And so I build from week to week to week to week to completion. And I know that everyone does that, but some programs I just don't see the sequential nature of their program. Like you asked me a question to think about what were my top 3 favorite exercises. Well, that's one of the problems is people like they'll pull exercises and do those exercises just to have something to do.
Right.
But it should have to do with the sequencing of the musculature and their habits. It not just having something to do, you know.
Right. You want to know why you're giving that particular exercise to a patient and not just, throwing it at them because A, you think it's easy, or B, you're really good at showing how to do it.
Right, right. And many times even my sequential program, I have to totally modify when you get these patients who have so many syndromes and things
Yeah.
wrong. And so you have to be creative at first, then you do the sequential program
Right.
when their muscles are more capable of
Right. And I
doing.
think if you don't have that sequential order, you're almost setting yourself and your patient up for failure, right? Like asking them to do,
You've got it.
yeah, asking them to do something that they're just literally not ready for.
Right.
So I'm very big. I agree 1,000% on you. There's a very sequential order to my programs as well. One of the, so I had asked some other hygienists questions that they wanted me to ask you on the podcast because again, I was so excited that I was having you on here. And I think, from all your experience and years and your journey as a myofunctional therapist, I'm sure. I guess the question more so is like, what exercises have you learned along the way? Maybe that aren't even the more popular myofunctional therapy exercise, the more standard ones that kind of everybody learns throughout their journey that just made you feel like, oh, wow, like that's a really good exercise. Like for me, I feel like there's some exercises where they seem so simple, yet they're working so much.
Mhm. Well, I have, in thinking about the answer to your original question, your top 3 exercises, Um, and I realized when I sat and thought about it that I do have a top 3. One is breathing. So I use products like Poneris or Air Gel or the various sprays of Arm& and Hammer and uh, Clear and different things. But Joy introduced me recently to Poneris, which is Ponaris, and it is a fabulous liquid that has an herbal base
Mhm.
that really does a wonderful job of clearing up the inflammation in the nose. So I have them do that 3 times a day. And then I have them use the air gel whenever they're outside, running, sports, walking, going to the beach, uh, flying in an airplane, just to keep the nose moist.
Mhm.
Okay. So breathing is the one of the main categories. We have to achieve nasal breathing, and you can't do that if there's swelling in the nose.
Mhm.
Along with breathing, you have to be teaching diaphragmatic breathing. So they have to learn to breathe deeper and slower.
Mhm.
And because most of them are breathing shallow and fast. So Buteyko comes into the picture. I am a Buteyko therapist. I do not teach it. I send them to someone else if they need it. I use modified portions of Buteyko. So usually my therapy results in correct breathing. So I haven't had to use that as often as I thought I might need to.
Mhm.
And then the other part of breathing is your head, neck, body posture. So I'm working on head, neck, body posture exercises at the same time that I'm doing diaphragmatic breathing training, nasal breathing training. Okay. So that's one big category. The
Mhm.
second big category is how you use your tongue. So we're working on the resting tongue position, we're working on the swallow, but we're also working on certain sounds that are the most detrimental and where a lot of speech problems are in limbo because nobody is training the tongue. And if you're not training the tongue in the correct use and swallow and everything, then they're saying their S's incorrectly, their TDLNs incorrectly, their CH and J, their G, K, and C sounds. Those are all tongue sounds. And you've got to have the tongue strong enough and adapted correctly in order to then change their speech. So I'm not a speech therapist. I don't try to do speech therapy, but I am definitely changing where their tongue placement is for those sounds. And then you have, with tongue use, you have teaching them how to eat correctly and drink correctly and sleep correctly.
Mhm.
And then the next big category, if you haven't been working on it, would be posture.
Mhm.
How they do everything from sitting in front of a computer to walking to sleeping to um, texting. You know, are they always with their head down? And
Mhm.
now you've got this 40-pound weight of a head hanging off of their shoulders. So those are my three big categories. And I do have, and I sat and thought about it a little bit longer, I do have three favorites. And these are what my patients, I tell them for the rest of your life, you should do these three things, even if it's only like once a week,
Mhm.
just to remind your subconscious mind of what it is you are expecting of it still until you're 124. Okay. So, and that would be the call sounds in two swallows, which I think I created, or I don't know, who knows at this point. But you do three call sounds with the back of the tongue, ka, ka, ka. Then you keep your mouth open and you swallow with only the back of the tongue. Then you place your tongue across the top of your mouth, stretch, bite, and swallow. So you're working the back of the tongue. You're telling the back of the tongue, you're still in charge. Keep in mind, you are still in charge. And then a basic swallow.
Mhm.
Okay. So then the second exercise is just reviewing in their head and doing a normal swallow.
Mhm.
What happens in a normal swallow? You're biting, your lips are closed and not moving, your tongue is on the spot and across the top of the mouth. And when you're gathering saliva with the back giddy, I call them the giddy up muscles, which are the buccinator and the tongue muscles. And you are using the back of the tongue again to swallow, touching the throat. So that full posterior swallow. And they're reviewing that in their mind and making sure that that's how, yep, that's how I'm still swallowing. And then the third one is the pencil pull, where they're biting on a pencil and curling under the pencil, pulling back with the tip of their tongue for a 10 count. and going over the pencil and pulling back for a 10 count. So those are, I do have three favorites, I guess, but you can't do therapy on just those three. However, I did a seminar once. I was at the point where I had had it with these referral sources, not paying attention and not sending patients, or not really recognizing, what's going on. So, so I was giving up, and I had literally saved the life of one of my patients who had had jaw surgery, and it was now failing. And she had been to other people, but somehow they had found out about me and came to see me, and we solved the problem. Okay. And then her mother found out that I was going to give up myofunctional therapy. And in fact, I just had lunch with her on Monday. So that's how long you keep friendships. And this was years and years ago. Okay. Her daughter was like 16 or 8, probably 18 at the time. And now she's long time married and in her own life. So she said, no, you cannot give up. So she put together a seminar of friends in her home and we called it How to Prevent Wrinkles and Sagging Chins.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
So I put together a page of exercises, a pencil pull, one of them. And it was just some simple things. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Some simple things that anybody could do. And it actually, there was a woman who attended who was a retired nun, and she had dentures. And she sat there with her mouth open, click-clacking her dentures. And it was like, oh my God. And she could not do hardly anything I was teaching. I felt so sad. And I couldn't take the time to just work with her, because I was presenting a seminar. And so then we met 3 months later, and to see if anybody, A, did the exercises, and B, if it made any difference. Oh my God. She walked in the door, mouth closed, no click-clacking, no anything. She had done those simple exercises, and it had totally changed her.
Wow.
So I guess, if we can only give them a few things.
Right.
And I guess now everybody's going to want to know my list of how to prevent wrinkles. So I'll have to send that to you probably.
Yes, please.
We should present that at spas, and I would get a free spa day for teaching it.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it's a fun thing to do. And why I didn't make a video, which people wanted, they wanted a video to take home. And so that was one of my big mistakes that I didn't do. I could have earned probably a great deal of money on that. But, it is fairly simple to change people's lives. And Joy Muller reminded me just yesterday, it was her birthday. And she said, Dan Garliner, when he was put in a nursing home, he had broken his hip, and he was put in a nursing home. In the nursing home, he was helping people do therapy because he saw so many of them having problems, wearing dentures and eating and things like that. So I guess a good myofunctional therapist never stops.
Yeah.
So when I'm in my future nursing home, I will still be doing myofunctional therapy probably. So yes. So on to any other questions that you have.
Yeah. Well, you talked about Buteyko, so I know that that's a modality that you have in your toolbox. Right. Are there any other modalities that you use as part of your programs?
I do. I use educational kinesiology, or called EdUK. And I use kinesiology a lot to show, not a lot, but to show patients how important the tongue position is. So if you've got a patient who's not really paying attention to you, it's a really good way to get their attention. especially these big jocks, who think they know everything. So you just have them stand with their arm out and one arm down. And then I put one hand on one of their shoulders in front of them, and then the other hand on their wrist. Okay. So now have them close their lips and put their tongue where they're supposed to, right? And then have them resist my push.
Mm-hmm.
And usually you really can't get much change if their tongue is correct across the top of their mouth and on the spot, and their lips are closed and their head is up straight. Okay. So then you have them open their mouth and just let their tongue be lazy, like you're trying to correct, and you retest them. And even a jock, you're going to get weakness. Not a lot. Most people, they'll lose all of their power. Yep. And so it's such a good way to convince people that this is so important. Now, suppose you've got a child who just won't give up their sodas or won't give up eating a lot of sugar type things. Have them bring that in. And then you muscle test them, they're strong. Now put the soda can in their other hand and muscle test them. Even with their tongue correct and their lips correct, now they are weaker. Mm-hmm. So it's a way to be able to show patients the pluses and minuses. The other question that you had too, that now while I'm thinking of it, is how do I explain the effect of the tongue tie to a parent so that you can get them to have the surgery? Well, that's another way, is to show, possibly with someone else, who's sitting with their mouth closed and has their tongue up, and then testing the patient, because their tongue is not going to be where it's supposed to be, and they'll be testing weak. And so they see some of the difference that way. The other way is to compare it to tying a child's shoelaces together. Okay, now walk for me. Well, obviously, they're not going to be able, they can shuffle a little bit, but they're not going to be able to walk. And then a tongue tie is that way. You're shuffling life. Whereas if you were free, if I untied your shoelaces, you could walk down the hall for me, couldn't you? Okay. So if you compare it to something like that, or I also take a large rubber band and place it on their thumb and my thumb. Okay. So when you have this stretched rubber band and then I release it, what happened to the tongue? It pulls back into, that position. So with the rubber band, you're never going to get that full stretch when you've got a tongue tie. It's always going to be in that pulled down position. So I digressed a little bit for you.
That's okay. That's okay.
So educational kinesiology is wonderful. And then I do those exercises with the patients. That's the cross crawl, the side kicks, the body balancers. There's a book that you can, I think, still buy, and it's EduK, ED-K, but it's educational kinesiology is the full. And it's a method of teaching children who have learning difficulties. And they are body balancing exercises that train the right and left brain to work as a team. And so by doing the educate exercises, they'll start out, they cannot hit this wrist to their opposite knee. They do not have that rhythm. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks before they can even start to establish it, but then they start doing it completely. And now when they integrate their exercises, they're actually integrating them instead of just doing them. Okay. Right. So the educational kinesiology is very, very important. There's another exercise called the diamond gait. And the diamond gait was created by Dr., I think his name was John Diamond in New York City, when he realized that the breathing mechanism and the rhythm of the heart and the coordination of all of these vital bodies, not symptoms, but whatever the word is I'm trying to think
Systems?
of, which we have to use them in coordination with each other. If that isn't happening, then it's difficult to get a patient well. So that he created the Diamond Gate, which is a walking, breathing exercise, and it actually does cranial osteopathy. So I have used this on patients that won't go see a cranial osteopath, and I've actually helped to, again, change their lives. And because they're finally coordinating right-left brain activity. So their reading improves, their math skills improve, their ability to play piano improves, dance improves.
Amazing.
And so cranial osteopathy, I don't know how people do without it. My life was saved with it. There is absolutely no way to get around that one. And because of that, I've sent many hundreds of patients over that 50 years to have cranial with life-changing experiences and getting rid of pain and keeping the body working at optimal level. Every baby should be seen by a cranial osteopath. There is no two ways about it. So a cranial osteopath, they can get rid of colic in one visit, maybe two. But colic is horrible, and the baby's in pain. The mother's going crazy. Nobody's getting any sleep. You take them to a cranial osteopath, and one visit later, they're fine. Come on, and the pediatricians won't even recognize them as viable clinicians because they're doctors. They're MDs who choose to be DOs. And a cranial osteopath goes on in additional years of training to do just cranial osteopathic manipulation. So those are the main things that I use. I've used many other people. I love the more orthotropic presentation of orthodontics. So I seek out people who do the BioBlock type of orthodontics early on in a child's life, or people who do Crozat. I love Crozat work, or the ELF. There's the DNA, there's all AGA, there's all sorts of appliances now. And finding those clinicians is not easy, but when you do, then those appliances are so much easier to work with myofunctional therapy.
Right.
And traditional braces, for the most part, and they're still pulling teeth. They should never be pulling teeth. And for the most part, they're still retracting. And where is all our sleep apnea coming from? Retraction. And mouth breathers who are moving their mandible back and using the muscles incorrectly.
Now, do you work with kids that are in traditional palate expanders?
That was one of the questions I thought about too, and the answer is a little complicated. Yes and no, but mainly no. So if you need expansion, where are you going to put the tongue? If they send you a patient where their palate is so freaking narrow and vaulted, how are you? What are they, a magician?
Right.
And where is this tongue supposed to go? So I've sent them back for expansion. Oh, we're not going to expand. What? And so in my career, I have worked with them, and I've actually achieved some expansion for them. But I'm not an orthodontist. I shouldn't be asked to do that, And so if they need expansion, get expansion. And I don't care if they're 58 years old.
Right.
And they come to see you. If they're narrow, they're narrow. Get somebody to expand them. And unfortunately, most traditional orthodontists won't in adults. They created them narrow with the first orthodontics, and don't get me started. So, but the answer to your question is the traditional appliances for expansion takes up
Mhm.
too much room in the palate. So don't try to do therapy and say, well, they're mouth breathers. I could work on mouth breathing. Wait a minute. You've got to, this patient's got to last for several more months.
Yeah.
So don't burn them out. Just let the expansion be done. Now, what I do try to get is a simple, more simple retainer so that there's not this big piece of plastic and stuff in the top of the mouth. Okay. So,
You mean once they go through the active expansion?
yes, after the expansion, try to get as simple a retainer as possible. There was an orthodontist that studied in the course, the original course that I took in 1971, and he wanted to hire me, but I was a young mother and my husband had left me and I had a baby to raise, and he lived on an island in Victoria, British Columbia. And his philosophy was that if you use the muscles correctly and there are no poor habit patterns, you do not ever need a retainer.
Yep.
Now, how many orthodontists believe that? And it's because they haven't worked with myofunctional therapists to establish a solid, good working relationship with muscles and habits. Now, a lot of myofunctional therapists do not pay enough attention to habits. You can't be biting lips, biting cheeks, sucking on this, that, and the other thing, leaning all the time. If you don't get rid of habits, you're setting yourself up for failure anyways. So habits on in my program are big. You've got to get rid of all of the nail biting and sucking habits and things.
Now, are you able to share any of the postural exercises that you would recommend to people? Are there any, like, again, I know everything's case dependent, but just an example of any. I'm not sure if you're able to share that.
Oh gosh, I have a whole series. Uh, I started out with I suppose I do have a favorite that if it was the only thing that you did, you'd probably be quite successful. And I don't have a pole in here, but it's called the pole exercise. So you want to take a broom handle or a mop handle. For big jocks and big people, you need a longer pole.
Mhm.
So you're going to have to find something that's longer because you put the pole behind their back across their shoulder blades. And now that you put the arms back and the hands come up behind the pole. Okay. So now they're standing very straight because they have no choice. The only thing you have to work on is making sure they get their head back. Okay. And now you walk for 1 minute that way. Then you twist with feet stationary. You twist for 1 minute. So you're working those hip muscles. And then you sit for 1 minute with that very straight posture. And you're asking them now, ask your body to memorize this, which of course it is. And so that one exercise is fabulous. The other is the wall. It should be called the door hold and slide. I call it the wall hold and slide, but it's hard to slide on a wall. So you want a door that's, slick paint. And so you're going to have your feet about 12 inches from the door with a soft bend in your knees. And then you lean against the door. So now you have your bottom against the door and your shoulder blades against the door, not your shoulders, but your shoulder blades. Now you tighten your stomach muscles and you pull your back completely against the door. You shouldn't be able to put your hand at all anywhere from the shoulder blades down to their bottom. Okay. And you hold that position for 30 seconds. Now your head is not touching the door, it's just up straight. You don't want your head forward, but just up straight. Okay. You hold for 30 seconds. Now you slide up and down the door, but you have to keep that back
Mhm.
and bottom and shoulder blades still touching, which is not easy to do. Okay. So that's 1 minute that is so freaking long that you can't believe that it's just 1 minute. And especially when they have trouble doing it, it's like, oh my God, that can't be. That's, you did it 5 minutes. You did.
Now, Barbara, is there anywhere that people can listen to you lecture? Do you have anything online that is accessible?
Um, I have a DVD that's a 4.5-day course that I taught, and that has my sequential program all the way through. It has diagnostics, and it has, I don't think the pole exercise is on that because I started doing that fairly recently. I don't even know where I learned it, but so that is probably the best way to learn everything that I do and my belief system.
And is that on your website?
It's on my website.
And do you want to share your website for everybody?
Yeah, it's www.tonguethrust.com. And my email is barbara@tonguethrust.com. So that's fairly easy to remember.
Definitely.
But yeah, otherwise it's challenging. I like with the coffee clutch and things, I send out answers and I get a lot of emails, asking questions. But because they don't know my work, a lot of them, well, what is this and what is that? And it again, you're taking things out of out of sequence. And yes, it could be valuable, but it's very time consuming for me to try to explain to people how to do things when they haven't been taught that as a myofunctional therapist.
Right.
So I get a little frustrated. Something I just recently put together that's in my DVD now is a beautiful pitch book. And it has wonderful anatomical pictures and drawings and various things that I use for all of my patients to present, like you do a seminar for a dental office, to present to them some of the things about myofunctional therapy.
I love the baseball diamond.
Yeah, isn't that great?
So creative and smart.
Yeah. And I'm disappointed with our organizations. We used to have Richard Barrett's organization, the IAOM. We used to have it once a year, a get together where all we did was problem solving, and we'd all bring our kits of goodies individually, and someone would ask a question or he would throw out a question. What would you do if? And you learn so much from other people and from just having to problem solve something,
Absolutely. Now, this might be a hard question, and I didn't ask you this one earlier. It just kind of popped in my head when you said that. And I don't even know if you could really even answer this, but in your bag of goodies that you give to the patient, if you could only give them one thing and that's it, what would you give them?
Oh my God.
I know that's hard.
Out of all of those things, what one thing? Oh my goodness.
You could get back to me with an answer too.
Probably the pencil pull.
Okay.
Just because at least you're strengthening the tongue. You're not getting the tongue to the spot or the palate, but you're strengthening the tongue. What else would there be? Wow. Something that is fabulous for the back of the tongue is the gum push, where I use spry gum, and I take 2 pieces, you chew it up, and then you roll it into a ball, and you place the ball on the center of the tongue, and put the tip on the spot, and then you push the gum up with the middle and back of your tongue, and that's what it should look like. So you started out with a ball, and now it should end up a long, straight piece of gum.
And the kids love that, I'm sure.
Probably the best exercise for training the back of the tongue that there is. And it's pretty simple. You can use any gum, but most gum is too soft. If you're using regular gum, ice cubes are the best. It's called
Okay.
ice cube gum, and you only need one with an ice cube. But it's a little more firmer than regular gum is. That's why I like spray
Yeah.
gum, because it's very
I'm
firm.
already thinking about like a handful of patients I can use that on, because I think, you know, it's so hard, especially for somebody that, you know, had a posterior tie for a very long time, forever, to really understand the concept of even moving the back of the tongue. So I find a lot of times, like when I start doing like the kaga or anything like that, and we start working on like that tongue humping, it's very hard for them to comprehend it. And I'm always having to scratch it with something, you know, give them something to stimulate it.
And they're one of the patients that you're going to modify your program right from the beginning, because if they can't get their tongue elevated, and they can't, because they've been held down their whole life. So that's the key that you're going to start with. And so I do the gum push. I also do the button twist hold. You could put weights, metal weights or wooden disc or whatever. But this is like string that is like a candle wick string.
Okay.
So you tie a double knot or triple knot on the end, and then you have some weight on the other end, and you increase that weight gradually by putting more buttons and more weights. But you have them put that knot the same place that they put the gum, back in the middle. Now tongue on the spot, and you hold that knot for an entire minute with the mouth open. They have to stretch open, and they'll go like this. They start going, whoa, no.
Open wide.
Of course, the tongue is exhausted,
Oh,
just exhausted by the time we get through with 1 minute. So that's another thing that I use routinely with that, plus the pencil pull, and then the tongue blade push, where I put 3 tongue blades together, and your tongue is pointed and retracted. And you're pushing straight down, not at an angle, straight down with your hand. And that is fabulous.
Absolutely. You are such a wealth of knowledge. This is so exciting. I'm sure I'm going to get so many. I'm going to have to I took a lot of notes, and I'm not always the best with putting show notes up. I apologize to everybody. People ask me about it all the time, and I get them out so late, but I know that this is going to be one of the episodes where everybody's going to want like literally everything you said. So I will do my best to do that. I'm sure I will be reaching out to you for the wrinkle-free exercise regimen that you have, because I'm sure anybody listening, even like people that aren't myofunctional therapists, are probably like, ooh, need that in my life. Is there anything else, Barbara, you want to leave the listeners with before we wrap up?
What do we have? 5 minutes?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, you asked me what case was my biggest learning experience and my toughest. I had a 9-year-old who came in. I call them lower than a snake's belly. They spend their time with their consultation looking at their fingers. You know, they can't even eye contact with you. They'll lift up their head to try to answer a question, but they are so burned out. He had been in speech 4 years. They had dropped him from their program because he wasn't progressing. Nobody had taken the time to ask questions. He had a major tongue tie. He had a 2-finger sucking habit 24 hours a day. He sucked his fingers at school. It didn't matter where he was sucking his fingers. Okay. And so he also had headaches every day, stomach aches every day. He had snoring and sleep apnea symptoms, restless sleep. And he had, of course, his speech issue was still the problem. He had the beginning of a narrow bite and open bite, and very poor head, neck, body posture. Okay. So what is the first thing that we would do as a therapist? We would stop his finger sucking. Well, this child sucks his finger 24/7. I had the most difficult time I've ever had in my career treating this patient, because I I had to accept my limitations and just keep him motivated and working.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got him. What I did was, it took me 6 months. He took me the longest I've ever taken with a patient, 6 months of time. But during that time, I got him to stop sucking his fingers at night the first night. But it was all of the rest of the time that we had to work on. So we just gradually took one thing at a time, like riding the bus or watching TV or sitting at my desk during English or whatever. And so he had, gradually, he stopped sucking his fingers, but it took me several months. Usually it takes me one day. So it took several months. And in the process, we did exercises. Just said, okay, he's still sucking his fingers, but so what? We're just going to train the muscles regardless. And we worked in that way. Okay. So then in 6 months' time, he had beautiful head, neck, body posture. He had no more headaches, no more stomach aches, no more snoring or sleep apnea. He was in fact, his mother said she took a mirror once and put it under his nose. She thought he was dead. He was lying there looking straight up with his hands across his head. I mean, it's not funny, but it was really funny.
Yeah.
Because here he was, this thrasher, and that was before I even knew what sleep apnea was. I was just going by the snoring. So he, all of these things corrected. So I sent him back to the speech therapist at some point, even went to her school and talked about what we had done, where he was. And he came back in tears the next week. And I said, whoa, what's happening? And he said, I said, you can tell me the truth. Just lay it out. And so he did. He said, she put me back in kindergarten. And she put him back with a group of kids that were just starting out speech therapy. And here he was in the advanced stage and needed that help. Okay. So I said, okay, I understand what you're saying. And she is doing her best with her caseload. So your brain had all of those years of training. All we need to do is access that. And so we did the therapy and accessed it. And he ended up getting rid of his speech problem, his bite totally corrected without ortho. And that sometimes happens also. But it was the most awesome case.
I'm sure.
And when this young man graduated from high school, he sent me his high school announcement and a picture of him with his lips closed.
Oh, so special.
So it was an extraordinary case. It taught me a lot. I had to really call on every reserve I could possibly imagine, and then some. But it taught me so much and how much we can help a person and how much they will change as a result of it.
1,000%.
So I thank you so much for having me. I love myofunctional therapy, obviously.
And I feel like at the end of every episode, I'm always telling every guest that we'll have to have them on again. And I do mean that, but I think I'm going to have to scooch you to the top of that list again, because throughout our conversation, 1,000 more questions resonated with me, and we don't have time today, but thank you, Barbara, so much. You're just such a joy to talk to, such a joy to learn from. We'll link your website, your email address if anybody wants to contact you. And thank you again so much for taking the time today.
You are very welcome. Mwah.